vehicle we're going to be working on today is a 2005 Chrysler Pacifica with a 3.5 liter engine. I'm going to show you step by step how to remove the alternator and steps involved to gain access to the belt, to the front of the alternator. Pretty cut and dry. I'll go ahead and show you step by step what to do. So with that, let's get started. Alright, first step and go ahead and remove that alternator on this 3.5 liter is always disconnect your negative battery cable. Now with the cable out of the way, we're going to go ahead and remove the upper engine cover. Then we can get to the, there's a bracket on top of the alternator we're going to gain access to. Now we're going to move on to the alternator. I'm going to go ahead and move you in a little closer so you can see the bolts I'm talking about. Next step, we're going to go ahead, we can disconnect the connector for the generator field, battery cable, take that loose, as well as the 3 bolts holding this bracket on to get it out of the way. And then we can actually grab the hose right here and position it as well out of the way. So we'll go ahead and get that going. Now holding the battery cable on the alternator is a 13mm, as well as the 3 bolts holding the bracket up. When you go to put the bracket back on, just make sure you read this side up, this side up. Can't mess it up. Now all we're lacking is actually getting the belt off the front of the alternator, as well as 2 of the main bolts going through. And we'll move on to that step next. Get the vehicle up in the air now. So what we're going to do is go ahead and remove the lower splash shield so that we can get to the belt. It's got 3 plastic fasteners, one here, one here, one here, and actually it's a total of 4, excuse me. We'll go ahead and pop those loose and we'll get this cover off. Now with that out of the way, we can get to actually the belt, get to the tensioner, get the belt off, and then we can get to the bolts holding that alternator on. And try to hold the camera and show you where the tensioner is, kind of a tight spot. Right above the balancer, I'll point it out with a wrench, there's the tensioner. Then the tensioner has a little squared off portion that you can actually put a 15mm wrench on. And just by turning it clockwise, you can actually, let's see if I can get you a good view, probably not. You can actually move it, and that will help you get the belt slack. There you go, you can actually see how the belt's dropping. Once you move it clockwise, go ahead and pull the belt off and go ahead and gain access to the top of the vehicle, and that's where you're going to loosen up the bolts of the alternator. At this point, I've gone ahead and loosened and actually started removing the 15mm bolts that go through to hold the alternator in. Here's one of them. I've already got the back one out. The back one's a little bit shorter. Like I said, they're 15mm. It's going to give me a pry bar and wedge between the mount and the alternator itself. Start working it out. Alright, so now we got the alternator out. The installation is really nothing else you need to worry about. It's just an absolute reversal of removal. Just put your 2 15mm bolts back in, get the belt on, get the splash shield back on, bracket, crankcase hose, battery cables, and of course the last step is going to be the alternator, the battery negative ground. Once you've got that on, you've pretty much completed the job, and then if you want to crank it up, make sure it's charging fine, otherwise you'll be ready to give it back to the customer.